Imagine for a moment that you've had a long night, like a really long night, and you woke up here. Where are you? What country are you in, even? This looks like any ordinary road, there's no way to tell, right? This post on the side of the road is what is known as a bollard, and this one in specific is exclusive to France. This is the general concept of GeoGuessr, an online game of sorts that drops you in a random location in the world and you need to figure out where you are. I've been playing for a few months now, and there is a whole lot to learn. I'll be sharing what I know and how to get started yourself. It's worth noting that GeoGuessr has two main types of play. The first, and one that I play the most and will be talking about here, is Streaks and Battle Royale. Effectively, they only require you to pick the correct country, or in one case of Streaks, the United States. The other mode is pinpointing the exact location that you're in on the planet. This one is, as expected, much more difficult, as it requires one to have an accuracy within tens of meters, as opposed to getting an entire country. As I'm still learning a lot about the game, I'm not great at this second type, and I'm still working on just being able to identify the country. An important first step is knowing which countries that you can even be dropped into in the first place. GeoGuessr uses the Google Maps API to pick its possible starting points. While the game lets you pick any country in the world, the only correct country or territory must be supported by Google Maps. Here is a map of Google Maps' availability by country. Everything in blue has images for things like roads and cities, while the ones in green have a different type of mapping, which I'll explain in a bit. Knowing which countries have what coverage is important to narrowing down to just a few. In GeoGuessr's official country streak mode, the list of available countries is even smaller than what is shown here, mostly removing the possibility of starting in territories or island nations, like those in Oceania. This brings us to being able to find the country. In both modes, this is one of the first steps to take, maybe after figuring out the hemisphere of Earth that you're on. This is most effectively done by looking at the sun. There's a compass in the bottom left corner of the screen. If the sun is in the north, you're in the southern hemisphere, and vice versa. If the sun is somewhat in both, you're near the equator. Sometimes the sun is at the horizon or covered by clouds and you can't make out the exact position, which makes this trick pretty unusable in some situations. A good way to determine some specific countries is what is known as a meta. These are unique features of the mapping themselves. The most common meta is the Google car that is taking the photos. The most common car meta is the presence of a roof rack on top, with very visible bars on either side of the car. These can be found in a number of nations, most famously in Ghana, where one of the bars' ends is wrapped in black duct tape. This is known as the Ghana tape, and makes the country extremely identifiable. Another distinct feature of bars is the potential for a little black inlay in them, which narrows the possible country down to just the Dominican Republic or Mongolia. Though, Mongolia's car also often features effectively a backpack on the top of it as well. Some countries also have the cars' side mirrors shown, and knowing what countries have these, again, narrows down the possibilities. Sometimes you'll be able to see the color of the car taking the pictures. This also gives a good idea of where you are. For example, Argentina is exclusively covered by a black car. This does not mean that a black car means Argentina, but if you are between, say, Chile and Argentina and the car is white, you're in Chile. One other meta to know is what is known as rifts in the sky. This is the result of a glitch in how the images were stitched together most likely, and causes the sky to look like it has cuts in it. These are found extremely commonly in Senegal, but also show up fairly often in Albania and Montenegro. They can be seen elsewhere, just more rarely and not as significantly. Another important meta to learn is the generation of camera used to take the pictures. Because Street View has been around for quite some time, there have been changes to the camera technology used to take the pictures. These generations of camera range from 1 to 4. Generation 1 is known as Potato Cam, it is very blurry, and is found almost exclusively in the United States and Australia. Generation 2 is most identifiable by a circular blur on the bottom of the picture, and a halo-like circle at the top. Generation 3 looks the closest to real life and doesn't have any very distinguishing features. Generation 4 is the newest and the clearest, also looking like real life, though with some extra saturated colors. The best way to distinguish between Gen 3 and 4 is to look at the sun. If it's a small circle, it's likely Gen 3. If it's a blob or you can't make out the exact shape, it's likely Gen 4. Not all countries are covered by each generation, so knowing which country is covered by what is important. One other camera meta to know is the low cam. This is found almost exclusively in Japan and Switzerland, where the camera is much lower than what it usually is. This is done to preserve from privacy, and is fairly obvious to spot after playing enough. It does seem that sometimes the camera is lower in other places, but in these two countries it is totally covered by low cam. Related to privacy, Germany has a lot of their houses and buildings blurred out, and most of the coverage is urban. It is also exclusively covered in the Gen 2 camera, So if you see the German language and the camera is another generation, you're very, very likely not in Germany. A few countries had their coverage taken in the fall or winter, most notably Czechia and Hungary in the fall, and Bulgaria in the winter. More often than not, if you see snow, you're either in Bulgaria or the northern Scandinavia area, Norway, Sweden, or Finland, and sometimes Canada. Here's another map showing which countries are covered by what. The countries in purple are exclusively covered by what is known as a trekker. These are photos taken by usually a person walking, with the camera on their back or on a bike, instead of mounted on a car. Often these are of famous places, such as the Taj Mahal in India or the pyramids in Egypt. Countries that do have car coverage can also have trekker coverage, most annoyingly in buildings like museums or malls. This brings to another important part of learning, identifying languages. There are hundreds of languages on Earth, and obviously you can't be fluent in every single one of them. However, it is possible to be able to identify a lot of them by their writing style or unique characters in each. For example, this is a sample of two languages, Czech and Slovak. They're written similarly, but can be distinguished. Czech features these unique characters, while Slovak features these. Lots of languages have their own unique characters, and knowing these is pretty important for distinguishing countries, most especially in Eastern Europe, where a lot of the languages look similar. Some other unique characters include the A with either of these diacritics for Romanian, as well as A, E, and I with a bar on top for Latvian. Both Latvian and Lithuanian feature the U with the bar, but Lithuanian also has a unique character of E with a dot on top. These barred letters also show up in Maori, a language found in New Zealand, but the two countries are pretty significantly different, most importantly that New Zealand drives on the left. Knowing which languages show up in which countries is important, such as German being found in Germany, Austria, Belgium, and Luxembourg, or French being found in France, Senegal, and Tunisia. Seeing Arabic and French together means Tunisia, while Arabic and English often means the United Arab Emirates, though there are sections where it is totally in Arabic. English is also found in a significant number of countries, so just because something's in English, it doesn't mean you're in America. Speaking of which, there aren't many countries that drive on the left. The most common of these are the UK, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, and Singapore. Knowing these is pretty important, so you don't guess the US when it's UK, or vice versa. At the start of the video, I showed France's bollard, or the post on the side of the road. These are also very helpful for figuring out a significant number of countries, as a lot of them have their own unique one. These are mostly found in Europe, but can be found worldwide, and some of them are shown here. There's a few cases where multiple countries have the same one, like Czechia and Slovakia, Italy and Albania, and Russia and a lot of other places. Using these as well as some other context clues makes finding the location a lot easier, because typically you'll be on the road when you spawn into a location. One other trick that is sometimes helpful is license plates on cars. There are a handful of unique license plates, but due to the nature of travel, they can show up in other places too. Most of these unique ones can be found in Europe. Almost all of Europe has this blue stripe on the left. That just designates that the country is registered in the EU. However, Italy, Albania, and sometimes France have another blue bar on the right side of the plate as well. Portugal has a yellow bar on the right. The UK has a yellow plate on the back and a white plate on the front, while the Netherlands and Luxembourg have yellow plates on both sides. There are also some areas in France and Spain that have double-sided yellow plates, but this is only region-specific and somewhat uncommon. Some other places have yellow plates, like Colombia and Israel, but neither of these have the blue EU stripe for obvious reasons. Turkey also has this blue stripe on the left, but it's not in the EU. Bhutan has red plates on both sides, but Brazil also has red plates for their service vehicles. Similarly, Norway has green plates for their commercial vehicles, Chile has orange service plates, and Peru has yellow service plates. Malta also has a plate with a tiny blue square in the top left corner, but also features a lot of EU plates as well. One last thing to talk about is microstates. These are tiny nations found in Europe that are self-governing, but have a lot of traits of other larger nations. I briefly mentioned Luxembourg earlier, but you can find a few more like San Marino, a tiny nation located inside Italy, Andorra, a mountainous country between Spain and France, and Malta, a tiny island south of Italy. The other microstates, the Vatican, Liechtenstein, and Monaco, are not found in CountryStreak, and they're mostly not officially mapped by Google, or just have a handful of single 360-degree images called photospheres. Distinguishing these countries is fairly difficult, most especially San Marino. Oftentimes, their street signs will have a metal frame around them, and the crosswalks are sometimes blue between the white stripes. Their license plates don't have the EU strip, but there's a lot of crossover between Italy plates and theirs, so it's hard to tell. Luxembourg, as mentioned earlier, has yellow plates on both sides of their cars, same as the Netherlands. The best way to tell this country apart from the Netherlands is this specific type of road sign. Otherwise, it's pretty difficult to tell. Thankfully, it doesn't come up that often, but I've lost a few rounds to it. Andorra is probably the easiest microstate to identify. It heavily features this pressed stone building type, and they're scattered all over the area. It's also surrounded by mountains and uses both French and Spanish, and also doesn't use an EU plate. The hardest thing to learn in my opinion is topography, or what physical features dominate an area. Places like the US feature extreme geography features, like the pine and fir forests in the Pacific Northwest and New England, to the deserts in Arizona and Texas. These landscapes are also found all over the world, and some places have more landscapes than others. Mongolia is mostly empty rolling dunes, but I've seen similar topography in Argentina. New Zealand is very green, drives on the left, and speaks English, but so does the UK. Topography alone doesn't immediately tell you where you are, but it can significantly help give an idea, along with all these other clues. With all this information put together, you should have a pretty good foundation to get started. Of course, I can't teach everything as I'm still fairly new myself, and a lot of the knowledge is just gathered by playing. Developing the intuition to know where you are is super important, and building that up is the main reason that I still play Country Streaks and haven't moved on to the other mode, pinpointing the exact location you started. Doing this well is exceedingly difficult, and I'm not at that level yet. There are people that can get within meters of their spawn point without moving the camera at all, and that's extremely impressive to me. Maybe someday I'll get there, but for now I'm happy that I can figure out where I am based on a sign on the side of the road. GeoGuessr's official map isn't the only way to play too. One of the most popular maps is called A Diverse World, and features over 50,000 locations from literally the entire world, including those not officially covered by Google, as well as nations and territories not found in Country Streak or Battle Royale. It's possible to do a sort of Country Streak here as well, though somewhat unofficially. This is an interesting way to play Country Streak, and I've been doing it more. Let me know if there's any specific topics you'd like me to cover in regards to GeoGuessr. I enjoy playing it a bunch, and I'm no way sponsored or paid to make this video. I just like geography a lot, and teaching other people about what I do is what I do. Let me know how high of a streak you can get, like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff, and I'll see you soon.